Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. What a lovely afternoon. Welcome. We're going to be looking at regenerative farming and AgriTech, particularly on data and AI. My name is Nick Gowing, a long-time attendee of the World Economic Forum, but we're not part of the forum, of course. I used to be a television presenter, but for the last 12 years, I've been running a project called Thinking the Unthinkable. One of the unthinkables is why still agriculture is still not regenerative as it could be and should be, and the evidence shows is deeply profitable and also much positive. Now, this has been designed by intent. So I've got here a matrix of how we're going to do this. Let me just give you a little bit of background, which is pretty obvious to all of you, but I want to be clear, because we're going to have breakouts later after about 50 minutes. But it's about how technology, data, and sensors and platforms, and increasingly AR, augmented reality, as an in-field interface turn regenerative agriculture from scattered pilots into a mainstream operating model. We want to spotlight real farm-level transitions already underway, enabled by satellites, by sensors, everything that most of you are familiar with, data platforms, MRV, precision input management, soil and biodiversity monitoring, traceability and scaling across complex value chains. I'm reading that because I don't want to leave anything out. How to make these transitionals operational, that's the challenge for you. We want to share your stories. We want to hear what has worked, what has almost worked, why it hasn't worked, and what is needed to make it work, and what has failed as well. Share your experiences. We're going to co-create a shared roadmap to scale regenerative farming using tech, AI, and AR. Now, after about 50 minutes, and then Nicola is here. Nicola, stand up, because you are running something at the back which needs to be explained. This is going to be dynamic. And Nicholas is running a project called Naught to the Power of N. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nick. Delighted to be here, ladies and gentlemen. Talking about things is obviously necessary and great, but building on it is even better. You spoke about thinking the unthinkable, Nick. I think we have to build the impossible into the possible. And that's exactly what we will do. Based on this discussion, while we talk, we will build. And after about 50 minutes here, we will present what the result of the building is. When we say we, who do we mean? It is O to the power of N. The world's first orchestration of intelligences company, bringing together human, artificial, and nature intelligence. Based on our orchestration system, we are going to build not just one venture ID, but about 100 of them during this session. And we will present you one of them after about 50 minutes.
Before the break.
So I hope the discussion is going to be great. It's going to help us enrich the project. And after 50 minutes, my two colleagues, fellow musketeers, Vincent there at the back. He's there at the back because the computer is linked to the technical here. And then we have Alberto here, our head of AI. They are going to present what the outcome of this is. Nick, the floor is back to you.
Thanks very much. So Xavi, Emmett, Adrian, Arne, and Tanya, please take your seats, because we want to hear your experiences. But let me, as they're taking their seats, underscore what we're trying to do, because I want to focus your minds for what we're going to do between now and 4:30. Why now? Moving from pilots to mainstream. The core tensions, the ambitions versus the reality. Where is the convergence there? How much is being achieved? How much is not being achieved? From field reality and system constraints and commitments as well. So those are the kind of things we want to most certainly achieve. It's a lot to achieve in the next hour and 20 minutes. with three big questions here. What have we learned from past scaling promises that failed? And what must be different? And that's building on what I said a few moments ago. What is different this time? Where does technology genuinely help? Genuinely help? Where does it risk becoming a distraction? What trade-offs are we still reluctant to acknowledge in regenerative transitions? So that's the framing, and we have 5 speakers to try and share their experiences. First, Xavier Laguarda, who's co-founder of MITI Labs. Explain what you do, and I'm going to be brutal. You've got to have 4 minutes only, each of you.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I'm Xavi, founder of MITI Labs. We are a company that develops regenerative agriculture programs specifically for rice farmers. So rice emits about over 10% of global methane emissions. It's the highest consumer of water in terms of agriculture. And it's very specific relative to other crops. It's all about the hydrology. And so we've specialized on rice. We work with over 70,000 farmers to date in India. And we finance these programs by selling carbon credits and working with organizations on insetting programs. Now, I think what's relevant for today's discussion, one of the key technologies that we've had to develop working with so many distributed smallholder farmers is how we monitor practice adoption at a field which is 1 hectare in size or smaller, and how we measure impact at that scale. So we use remote sensing, satellite imagery models to track every week of the season things from soil moisture, water level in the field, crop growth, all the indicators that help us understand what's happening, and we can do this at scale thanks to this technology. And then we use greenhouse gas models to model this out. So I think the business as usual would be you can run these programs, but it's very hard to monitor what's really happening. That's a limiting factor for whoever's investing in these programs. The proof point, and using our technology, we're able to actually prove that. So we're both operators on the ground and have the technologies that we then also sell to other program managers. Thank you.
Xavier, what hasn't worked?
Oh, many things haven't worked. I'd say
the general outline of what has disappointed you and what needs more work doing to it.
I'd say one of the most frustrating things in this space, maybe at a higher level than just our business, is how closed a lot of the data systems are. India, specifically Southeast Asia, a lot of the places where we operate are very data scarce environments. So we need to actually go and collect a lot of data, run a lot of experiments. A lot of other organizations are doing the same thing, whether they're educational organizations or philanthropies or other corporates. And I think that open source systems would be very favorable for the space. We'd have better models, we'd have overall better systems, and I think there's a lot of duplicity in a lot of the work that we do. So a bit more collaboration in open systems is something I'd recommend, and where a lot of the current systems struggle.
And do you think that kind of collaboration is achievable?
Yeah, definitely.
What's got to be done?
We're currently working with Yale's Carbon Containment Lab, the International Rice Research Institute, and I think it's about creating incentives for corporates to actually share this data. So, in our case, a lot of coalitions of buyers that will kind of support these programs if the data is shared and you're more transparent about your data. So I think there has to be some incentive, mainly from the private organizations, but I think there is definitely movement there.
Does anyone want to come in quickly and ask any questions? Please, can we get another microphone? I don't know where it is. Who's got a microphone? Who's hiding a microphone? Who's sitting on a microphone? I can't hear a heartbeat. I'll come to you when I can. Okay, if someone could find me another microphone. Or maybe we've only got them, all 4 of them here, and that's it.
I can just shout.
Shout, yeah.
I just wanted to provide context. So Tony Goldman from the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures. At COP30, we announced a series of recommendations to upgrade the...
Tony, just hang on, I'm going to come, because there are people online as well. Make it quick, but
I was just going to provide a bit of context building on that first point. So Tony Goldner from the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures. COP30, we issued a series of recommendations about how to upgrade the nature data value chain for all sectors. And one of those recommendations was to secure funding to launch a nature data public facility, which would serve not just this sector, but all sectors. So I just provide that by way of context for today's discussion.
Thank you very much. Anyone else quickly? All right, let's move to Emmett Smith-Cordell. Welcome. You're going to talk about particularly adoption, skills, and digital inclusion, particularly why adoption remains the main bottleneck.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Emmett. I'm with Goodwall. Goodwall is a skill-based mobile app to help youth connect to opportunities. And we do this by giving them TikTok-style micro-learning, where they can engage and build community together as they explore and learn about opportunities and career paths with our partners. And we partner with public and private institutions. We reach about 150 countries and 100 million youth. And we partner with organizations like Microsoft and HP, which last year announced an alliance on digital and AI fluency. And we see that this type of alliance is really empowering and scaling impact very quickly. We see a lot of opportunity to replicate that in the agriculture space. We're excited that we've recently launched a partnership with Nestle to begin that. And with that partnership, we're going to be helping youth to explore and learn about opportunities in regenerative agriculture and help them to get there. Because this space, as we see it, and as many of you have probably experienced, really has a youth challenge. There's an aging population of farmers. There's a very small percentage of farmers that are under the age of 35. And a lot of youth do not feel that they have access to learning opportunities to understand the careers in the space. And so we want to help make the future of farming and the future of careers in this space seem sexy and appealing, but really make this industry seem future forward and tech driven and profitable for youth to move into.
Not maybe sexy, but let me put it in another way, asking you the question about skills pipelines, particularly micro-learning as enablers.
Absolutely. So we and many of us have probably experienced that our attention spans have shortened as many things are happening technologically. And we feel that learning, and you can see it, learning has really moved this direction. And in order to reach the younger generations and in order to reach older generations of farmers that aren't sitting in front of a computer, you need to find quick ways to reach them, simple, easy ways to understand, for them to be able to understand and learn. So micro-learning, quick, short, TikTok-style, 10-minute courses, 3-minute videos, that is what we're empowering. And we're seeing that youth are really enjoying this. They're getting certified and they're feeling that they're progressing in their skills.
Farmers learning from TikTok.
Yes, not TikTok, farmers learning on Goodwall. So we really have three audiences in this space. We have farmers, existing farmers that want to learn more and upskill themselves. We have youth that are interested in moving into careers in this space, but maybe don't know how to do that. And then we have youth who know nothing about agriculture and farming, and they want to learn. And so we're targeting our content and our learning to each audience accordingly, because in micro-learning, that is very important to capture attention and to keep them engaged.
Thanks. Before we go to Adrian, anyone want to come in quickly and ask anything for clarification, which I should have asked, or we should have heard directly from Emmett? No, nothing at the moment. Okay, let's move on then. Adrian, you're from Genesis Soil Health.
Yes, hi everyone. Adrienne, I'm the co-founder of the company. Genesis is basically what we call a MRV, measure, report and verify, but more than that, we are focused on soil health. So, and it's really important when we are talking about agriculture. I think maybe all of you know that more than 50% of the global GDP depends on nature. And on this nature, soil health is really, really important. It's not just a support for crops. It's more than that. It's the way to secure our production. So now this point of view is shared, I think, everywhere. But the second point is that we need a common definition about soil health. And you were talking to TNFD just before, but we need common definition. And for soil, it's really new that there's a kind of consensus about soil health. Soil health, it's a way to protect soil functions. And that's also really important because soil, it's not only fertility. It's also a way to fight climate change. It's the first carbon thing. It's a way to protect water quality and quantity, so drought and flood. That's really important, and also it's a support for all the life, terrestrial life. So there's to gain, I think, a conviction shared and a definition shared, but we have a lack of knowledge on these topics. A really lack of knowledge, and so we need to collect data not just for the MRV. We need to collect data to understand the impact of our practices on soil, and that's really important. It's not just to report something, it's to help the change at the farm level, and that's what Genesis do. Maybe I can share some example, or we will do it later, I don't know. Okay, I do it now. So two examples of two of our clients. We work with LVMH, and it's an example of what we do with them. They have a supplier in Turkey, and this supplier is this supplier produce cotton. So they engage 3 farms in regen ag transition, and we begin to measure everything at the farm level in each field. So we measure physical, biological, chemical indicators with a standardized protocol, with the same lab for each field. That's really important to try to decrease the uncertainty. So after a few years, we make correlation between the practices and the data, and we can see that some practices have a better impact than others, and now they are scaling it to all the farms around the supplier. Another example is with Nespresso. What else? And Nespresso, they have engaged, since 20 years, they have engaged more than 80%, I think, of their farmers in Regen Ag, but they don't know if the practices they do have a good impact. So we have measured, I think, something like 70% of their production in the field to see if there is an impact, and at exactly the same. If there is a difference between farm with in Regen Ag since 5 years or in 10 years, since 10 years, if some practices have a better impact than others. And that's really nice to see that when you have a lot of data, but reliable data, really good data. It's not just to have data. You need to have data that can talk. That's really important. And when you have this kind of data, so as I said, same protocol, same lab, same indicators, you can see some really interesting results, like how we can move forward, what could be the future of the impact if they keep this kind of practices. So we can make machine learning, and we can modelize the future. So that's really important.
One of the things from the pre-reading, I was a phrase used about over-engineered metrics. What does that mean? What are you saying about over-engineered?
I think we have to find metrics that can be helpful for the farmer and for the company at the same time. So the metric that we use, you know, it's for a farmer, it's organic matter, okay? But for a CEO, it's CO2, it's climate. So we just have to find the good level of information, the information that it's good for the farmer and the company.
Okay, thanks. Anyone want to come in with your experiences or any questions for clarification? Not at the moment. Let's move on to Arne. Arne from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, particularly about what companies really need to scale regenerative sourcing.
Let me start with, I think, I think most farmers are neither, fully convinced or feel that they have the means or the support to change. And I think that is, so if you look at most subsidy schemes, they are not stacked up to support regenerative ag. They are stuck in the old paradigm. Yes, a lot of companies, you mentioned Nestle, Unilever, PepsiCo, they put aside a substantial amount of money, but they're going about it somewhat in a piecemeal way. You go then to TechnoServe or Quantis or Earthworm or whatever company, they do their own setup, they do 20 projects, and it takes us in the right direction, but it doesn't scale. And I think what happened is that if we look back in the pre-kind of 2015 period, leading up to Paris and the SDGs, there was very strong collaboration within both industry and other actors to get to that point. We did also a little bit, the post kind of 2015 years. But since then, which has also been the right thing, each company has gone into their own supply chain. Okay, I need to decarbonize. I need to reduce my scope 3. I need to figure out how I do this. What are the new business model? What do I acquire, etc. So we all been a little bit introvert, but it doesn't add up. So at this stage, I think what we need to do is how do we amplify and really strengthen the collaboration and trust building, and doing that with farmers and providing them the right. And this is where the data point comes in. Data today, most farmers today and farms and fields are invisible. Each product in retail has a QR code. The field, no common ID. There are pockets of these. Same with data, so today AI is kind of, pushing forward, but we don't have the quality data available to train those AI models. We are at the, we had the discussions over the weekend. More Foundation and Systemic organized a discussion down in Zurich before we came up. And that fork in the road is very much on the data and digital side. Because we either go down, as you mentioned, more open source, open platform data sharing, or we lock into proprietary and big tech. So which way do we go? But to make that happen, it requires collaboration. In the human genome, you had the Bermuda kind of principles. What if you have this now for digital and data for food and ag?
What about the minimum data credibility?
What do you mean by that?
Well, exactly that. What is the minimum data credibility?
No, I mean,
can you create a standard?
Yeah, I think you can, but again, it depends on what type of farmers with what commodities and what landscapes. So you need to somehow, in some respects, in some type of situations, you need a lot of data on many variables. In other places, you might need less. So you could say, okay, what is the bare minimum that we need to guide and drive, the right incentives, the right investments, accountability, etc. But in other places, you need probably more data. But that's also, somehow it's not lack of data. If you just take satellites, you go down to 1 meter, we have a lot of data, but it's just that it sits in so many different pockets and it's not, easily available.
So what is needed?
No, we need common standards. So we need a common infrastructure, call it a digital public infrastructure, but we need a common ID for fields in the world. In many places we have a national cadastre, but we need a farm ID. We might need to give farmers an opportunity to say, okay, here's the ledger, here's an index of what data points are available for that field or for that farm. And then, it's a bit, back to what you said, okay, we need water, data on water, we need on soils, we need on biodiversity, and we need obviously on the crop being produced or whatever inputs is being applied, producing that crop, and what are the outputs. And these are data points that we, in many respects we have, but it's too, I spoke with, Jim Andrew from PepsiCo here the other day, and, it's too costly for him. He can't scale. He can do it with farmers today, but it's, ground-proof data is too costly. So he's looking, okay, how much of this can I do through remote sensing? But then what about the farmer and the farmer value in this? So there's a lot of questions on the table here. And I think we are at that opportune time now in the next 2 to 3 years to figure out how do we, both farmer community, industry and other actors.
It's going to take that long, is it? 2 to 3 years, you think?
It could even take longer, I would say. But we need to get going with it. We need to get going with it. And that's, I think, is this fork in the road that we are at now.
Before we go to Tanya, anyone want to jump in? Please, I've got a microphone here. I'm coming across. Introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Sarah Murphy, and ironically, I am a rancher. I'm kind of out of my depth in the Southwest Colorado. I raise bison. I own a bison meat company and have been raising bison in the regenerative agriculture space and working in the regenerative agriculture space for over 10 years. The reality on the ground, a couple things is one, in my experience, just to offer, practices are so contextual. The same practices that work in regenerative agriculture in Southwest Colorado are not applicable in Sweden, that are not applicable in South Africa. And so a lot of the research now is looking at outcomes, right? Just outcomes. So let's not even agree on necessarily practices. Let's just agree on what healthy soil, healthy water infiltration rates look like, and then the outcomes are what we measure. I think in the reality in the investment space, that's becoming, even like you were just saying, in lots of the arid climates, it's a minimum 5 years until we can see any substantial carbon sequestration. That could be like off takes that could be purchased by whoever. And then just to your point, farmers cannot pay to have carbon samples taken on their land. So I just feel like you were saying the subsidizing or somebody else has to pay to give farmers and ranchers the incentive to actually change their practices. Otherwise, it's asking farmers and ranchers to risk their entire livelihood for what? But I just appreciate the conversation as an actual farmer in the room. So thanks.
Can I get just a quick comment? And
Anna, can I just also mention that all of you are nodding agreement?
Oh yeah, okay. No, but just a point on this more practices versus outcomes. And obviously, I mean, I think today many look at the practices as almost like as a proxy until we can agree on what those outcomes are and how do we fully measure them. But I think that's the way we need to go. And then obviously those outcomes will be a bit like a planetary boundaries. It will look different. You have like, okay, I'm not going to go outside this circle on whatever variables that I'm measuring, but each farm, each landscape will be different on those outcomes.
Adrian, I saw you nodding an enormous amount as Arne was speaking. Is there anything you want to add about collaboration particularly before I go to Tanya?
About the cost, I think that's right. It's impossible for a farmer. It's not the farmer who has to pay it. But for the cost of ground-proofed data, okay? I think we are not taking the subject by the right side. So by the right side. It's like for political polls, you see. We don't need to ask the whole population to know their point of view. So it's a statistical approach. When I say that we have measured more than 70% of the sourcing of Nespresso, it's not 70% of their field. It's the statistical approach. It will be really clear, and mathematics are really good at that. So we make to do some cluster. It's a cluster, okay, I'm sorry, but it's a little bit technical, but we make cluster, it's pedological, climatic clusters, and we go just to sample the field who are representative to this cluster. That's the first, to cut the cost. The other way to cut the cost, we need to share the knowledge. And really, really, I think something is really important. To share this knowledge, we need to make coalition between the companies. When we are working with one supplier, he has many clients. When I work on cotton with LVMH, Inditex, Kering, I don't know, many of them, okay? They can share this kind of costs because I think that it's a common good, a common knowledge that we need to share. So I think it's not really the problem of the costs. It's the way we develop, we put it on the field. Yeah.
All right, Adrian, thanks very much indeed. Let's move on now to what makes regenerative investable. Tanya.
So thank you very much. My name is Tanya Havman. I'm the co-founder and director of Club Mondial. So we are an investment advisory firm. We also develop and implement financing solutions. We work on transactions in places like the US on a standalone basis, and also have finance instruments and have financed everywhere from Madagascar to Honduras and in between, using a supply chain approach to that, looking both at working capital financing as well as long-term transition financing. it's always very exciting to hear about like data and all the wonderful things around data, but the reality from a financing and a business perspective, and I appreciate what you said, is that, you know, the nature data piece is just one data piece. So when we look at something from a financing perspective, frankly, the things that, you know, keep us up at night more from a kind of financing perspective is, what does the governance look like? What are the customer relationships? What are the assets does this business have? Like, how monetizable are these assets? Like, what relationships they have with their logistics providers, their input providers, all those kind of things. Like, what is their extent of their supply chain? How are they doing risk management? And I think, you know, the kind of nature data and kind of climate and those things, some of those things are relevant in terms of like business materiality, and some things are frankly kind of just like reporting because you're obligated to report. And the materiality of those also depends on who the stakeholder is and the time frame that they're operating in. For example, if we're doing a working capital loan, the kind of decisions that we need and the timeliness of those decisions is very different from, you know, we're doing like a 7-year transition loan, or we're doing a guarantee to a local financial institution. So I think we have to really think about the context of like what we are collecting data for, and, you know, if that is a cost-effective way in terms of like, does it provide timely and useful information for the entity that is going to use it. And, you know, we do collect information. I think there's a challenge around consistent quality of information for decision making. So building the pipes a bit for data. But I think there's also a challenge in the kind of information that, you know, we would need as a working capital provider would be different than like what a large corporate might need, or like someone that's buying carbon credits. So I think finding the overlaps on that would be maybe a natural starting point.
What about risk? How does digital MRV actually reduce it?
As I said, I mean, 'cause I think what type of risk, if we're talking about credit risk, which is what immediately kind of comes to mind, you know, am I going to be repaid by this borrower? Is this, you know, investment going to be able to generate sufficient enough return to, you know, be a positive addition to my portfolio? I think, frankly, that's probably like nature risks are probably not the main risks that you look at first. They are part of a kind of a spectrum of risks that one consider. And I think digital MRV, I mean, in the field, yes, but like, you know, if you're just collecting, if you are financing a company that is an aggregator or a trader, for example, on cotton, and you just have like digital MRV on like one place, like that doesn't necessarily help understand like, you know, how affected you are across like, you know, larger risks or changes in price, or, you know, so I think it's all very contextual, and I think we have to think about what is the position of that data that we're collecting with respect to business operations, timeliness of decision making, materiality of decision making.
Arne.
No, I just want to give one example. So WBCSD kind of being facilitating a partnership in Brazil called the Landscape Accelerator, and it's a public-private partnership setup. And one of the things we are looking at, because Brazil has what they call the CAR system, which is a land registry holding data on, you know, on forest, water, you know, so things linked to the farm. But it's only about 5% that is validated by the farmers themselves. And that combined with the opportunity to put, you know, we have actually a system for field ID, so each field in Brazil will have a unique identifier. But because we don't have this operationally in place, the farmers can't access finance or finance at lower credit. So what we're looking at now, and so that's both finance as and insurance. Insurance companies are taking, so if you take the Cerrado landscape, they do an average, you know, say they look at soy or cotton and other commodities, and they do an average, you know, premium. If they have the specific data for that farm, and that farm is doing a better performance on sustainability, they will offer, because that's also de-risking, you know, the insurance. So that's why I think, you know, data and visibility and identity, and have that in a standardized format across different countries, regions, landscapes is key. So there is money on the table for the farmers to bridge the regenerative ag, but they can't access it because the data don't flow in the right way.
Can I say something slightly controversial?
Please do.
I think one thing is kind of the farmers' profitability and the information the farmers has. I think the other thing that I think sometimes we're a bit lacking is just sort of the ecosystem that the farmers are in. Because, for example, we're working on a transaction. Actually, we just did a loan guarantee for fisheries, and we're working on other loan guarantee facilities in the US. I think one large issue with local banks is, they may they would like to give farmers more credits, but according to banking regulations, they have to hold a certain amount of collateral. So I think, maybe giving farmers more information is useful, but it might not actually help them really access additional credit from the bank unless we change. Or what we're looking at the moment are structures where larger corporates that are interested in that sourcing landscape actually give the bank a locked pool of money that they can then use for those farmers to actually have more funding. And I think that links more into kind of the MRV and the kind of KPIs rather than necessarily on the kind of other way. But
Emmett and Xavi, do you want to come in at all? You've been quiet for the last few minutes.
Well, I'm just hearing a lot that I can resonate with, because particularly when it comes to incentivizing youth and farmers to make a change and to implement something new, we see that even just the smallest rewards, the smallest incentives, if you can show that there's an outcome, if you can show that there's a reward waiting for them at the end of that line of the change, it can make a difference. For example, HP is one of our partners, and through some of the learning challenges that they've run with Goodwall and the programs, they've actually given youth devices, electronic devices, as a reward. And this is in their budget, a small piece of what they're investing in this program, but it makes a huge difference. And with farming, obviously in regenerative agriculture, we're talking about much, much larger investments to make true change. But are there little changes and little incentives that can be rewarded along the way to really encourage micro changes?
Xavi.
I think, well, I guess from this short discussion, to me, the takeaway a little bit is that we're talking about different applications for data, right? Like whether you're getting a loan or whether a corporate is supporting a program, or it's, regional differences, crop differences. I think in a lot of these discussions, obviously, we have to go quite high level because it's a 1 hour discussion. But the reality is that you just can't solve it with one blank statement. I agree with you that there's a lot of things that you can standardize, and then we kind of need to take a level down, and then for each application, each crop, each geography, you kind of need to create your own mini standards. Because some of the customers that we work with will be a large tech company that's buying credits and wants super rigor, and it's all about incredible accuracy. And then we'll work on an insetting program where actually quite high level data and plus minus 20% is totally fine. And so you kind of need to you can standardize, but I think it is very application and category dependent.
Good, thank you.
Can I just give one last food for thought, and it's going a little slightly in a different direction, but I think looking at this room, we represent mainly the global north. It is the global south, and especially China, India, and Africa, who's going to define the future of food. China is driving technology developments now at a speed that I don't think we really understand. We heard the other day here, most likely on the next 5 years, they will reduce their soy import with 30%. If that happens, what does that imply for US and Brazilian soy producers? So that's, just on the demand side. Technology developments also on alternative proteins and other things. Data, for every 10 engineer being trained in the US, you have 100 in China. What does that really mean? Same with India, on the forefront of technology. Africa needs to find their own way. So I think these are things that we need to also reflect on as we discuss these topics.
Thanks, Arne. Is anyone here from the Global South who'd like to contribute? Please, I can see a hand going up. I'm moving towards you with my microphone. So, no, behind you. Don't worry, I'm not coming to you. Can someone take the microphone from me?
Thank you. So,
where are you from?
Anna, my name is Anna Badiru from Nigeria. So we're building an integrated processing and production forage platform focused on alfalfa from Africa regional markets to the GCC. So, I mean, I thank you guys. First of all, thank you to the panel. A lot of really good insights and points. I think sometimes for me, the way we're coming at it is thinking about how we can leverage what's already been done and taking the best of both worlds and not trying to make, let's not let progress get in the way of perfection. And also thinking of like, what are some of the tech that we've used in other sectors that we can now implement, right? That are low cost. Thinking through one of the thought process right now in terms of traceability. So the batch ID and how easy it is for us to create QR codes, right? So how do we implement that and take that? So I think as long as we continue to have this kind of conversations, knowing that, okay, there's gonna be some complexity, some nuances, global north, global south, but now having those conversations and taking what works, right? A blended approach and making the best of all the options available while still keeping the, still keeping it cultural context, keeping it in context for the specific markets.
Anyone else? Please, yes. Could you move the... I can't get to the microphone. You can move it forward.
Thank you.
There are two others as well. Let me tell you, we've got about 10 minutes before we hear from Nicola with the progress report on what you've all been saying. So see this as part of a panel discussion, a broader panel discussion, to work out what is deliverable.
Catherine Foster. I am the Finance Innovation Lead for the EU's EIT Food and the WWF Fellow for the Food Innovation Hub Europe. So I'm going to provide sort of a European context, but I also want to make comment that we talk about global north, global south. I come from a northern community in Canada, and Indigenous communities, regenerative practices are really important here too, and face some of the same challenges, but many different also constraints in terms of where they're situated politically. But I'm here just to say that to resonate with a few things and to tell you how I'll be listening to feed this into the ecosystem for the Europe. It's the world's largest food and agri-innovation initiative in the world, and said that twice. But we focus on startup, education, training, and we have 7 regenerative landscapes in Europe. There's no finance institutions in those except for one. And we are doing MRV challenges across those. We do engage with startups, we do farmer training, but what is missing? The focus here is, it's very contextual, different climatic zones, different crops, different stakeholders, but it's how you actually orchestrate that behind it very practically, and then underpinning that, how will all of this unlock the finance? That is what I'm here to learn more about and to contribute to. I just wanted to make a statement because even though it is focused on Europe, the fact that we have the European policy regulation, we also have the digital agenda, we can embrace that and actually build something useful here that could resonate globally. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me reinforce that point and others about how do we move from pilots to repeatable, investable models across value chains. We have I'm going to come to you first.
Okay.
You can't get rid of the microphone that easy.
That's good. My name is Eric Binslev. I'm a partner in a regenerative private equity fund, basically buying farmland in Europe and turning it into regenerative practices, delivering commercial returns. We're in a fund 2 now. I think what is missing here is quite a lot of things, but I want to start with what I do. We're counting on a reallocation of margins in the food system. Okay, so right now the extraction has been under the premise of the farmer margin, and that's why there's no financing for farmers to change or move at all. Just by taking out chemical inputs and external inputs, we can save 35% on operations, and we've already implemented that in Portugal. In blueberries, we're doing it in tree crops and livestock in Spain, and we're doing dairy in Denmark. So it is possible. There is going to be a little bit of a fight of the titans, because this means that somebody will have to lose out on the margins. At the same time, we have geopolitics that are asking for food security, so we also have to look at diversity of crops and producing closer to the markets. And I think the conglomerates, or the big guys who are, if any, able to change to a more local or regional system and and product origination with it will win out. But there's a lot of things missing. We have a skills gap. We have an age crisis in farmers in Europe, and there are many things that we'll have to battle with, not just Donald Trump. But maybe we can get some action on. We can emulate China in the speed by which we can implement our future food system.
Would you like to identify positives too?
Cost saving at farm by going regenerative and producing more resilient in our soils, because that is the key driver, and it's the future that we're looking at with climate affecting commodities. We have to decommoditize our food system as soon as possible.
Yes, thanks. My name is Erik. I'm a co-founder of a technology company called Co-Own. We do a digital AI framework that is allowing individuals and companies to collaborate, like collaborative AI, where you own your own information and your own models, and allows for a trust-based digital framework. And we are based this around regenerative practices. So that's like my technology background here in the room, but I'm also a regenerative farmer. We're working in a very small scale in Norway. And I just wanted to share kind of what I think is the most challenging thing from the small perspective in a country where you don't really have good farming conditions, is the subsidies. So basically for me, I think that's the biggest challenge. We are competing against subsidies, not against market access or anything like that, at least at a small scale. So I just wanted to kind of throw that into the discussion.
Anyone else want to jump in, particularly how to go from pilot to repeatable projects which are shown to work? Do you want to? I thought your hand was going up. Anyone else? Nicola, are your colleagues ready yet?
Thanks, Nick. I shall ask. Vincent, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm born ready. Yes, let's go. Many thanks. We'd like to contribute to the discussion by turning ideas into action. And
yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good idea.
There are screens everywhere here as well, by the way, on the side, I think.
And what we have been doing is to build an engine that is a venture building engine. And the idea for us is to unite intelligences in stewardship of life. That means based on any given input, we ideate venture ideas and we create the documentation and the strength and the velocity to turn these ideas into proper venture that aim at maximizing their impact, positive impact in the world. So what I've been doing is to listen to the conversation and take some of the input, including the description of the session and the title, and I've asked our engine to come up with solutions. It did so, and what you see on screen here is no less than 100 venture ideas. They are in the very topic we are speaking about, and of course, they can be personalized and pushed further. That's about building a shared understanding of the world and an actionable mechanism to reach impact. So you see these colors, this cloud of nodes here. Each one of them is one particular venture. They are organized in families. So the green family here is about integration and connectivity ecosystems. The red one is about AI-enabled decision and insight engines. On the blue side, you have the regulatory and compliance automation. And then you have another category, a family, that is about robotic and automation for soil sampling, right? Now, when I have all of these ventures, I have criteria on how to filter them. You might say, I want to work on the overall viability of the project, right? And exclude some of the ventures. You might say, impact is key, and I want to go, to filter the venture out with their impact level. So it's a scoring specific on impact, right? And you can also see the size of the market to narrow things down. and the competitivity and the technology feasibility of the ventures. Once you have your candidates, you can scrutinize the content of them, where you qualify them and you quantify them with an average viability score, the size of the market, the total TAM that they are targeting, and basically you can go deeper into each one of the value proposition, having access to a fully comprehensive, sophisticated analysis with business modeling, strategic positioning, pricing, but also risk investments analysis, and a specific focus on impact, in the sense that we have an impact prior that allows us to understand the impact and the governance fit, and also all of the red flags that you can get, and the agency of the system, and also the systemic implications of the venture. So you have also an impact fit score here. So if I fast track to one example, right, to illustrate what we can do, I've taken the case of AgriLink OS here that has been generated on the fly by the system. And that's a universal API middleware allowing any irrigation and AgTech platform to connect, share, and normalize farm-level data in compliance with EU interoperability standard. So basically, we have run this particular ID in the system, and 52 AI agents orchestrated in teams have crunched almost 700 data sources in 47 minutes to provide you with the results of this. So that's the base for the team to create the venture. You can qualify the market opportunity with the typical sum, SAM, TAM matrix, see the competitive landscape, the customer segment, but also a very precise risk assessment matrix with the different categories. You can ask the system to develop the pitch deck for you based on a fully developed business plan. And the business plan that we create is 70 pages long, but here I just show you the results of a very structured and investor-ready deck on this very value proposition. What you can do also is go further and ask the system to give you the full financial model, because you want to turn ideas into action and impact. That means you need to have the numbers and the plan into grip, and you have to have a clear roadmap. So you can go into the revenue projection, you can choose your scenario, conservative, positive, or base. You can check the cohort and the retention of it, the full unit economics, and much more. So that's allowing you basically to have the venture you want, and with the right level of granularity. You can even download the full business plan of this, and that would basically give you a 70-page, very developed document that I will show on screen for you. And that's AgriLink OS with basically a structured state-of-the-art business plan of 70 pages, addressing obviously the root cause of the problem, the way to address it, and with the right market-driven approach to reach the maximum outcome, not only return on investment, but also return on impact. That's what we are advocating for in the way to align purpose and profit into real-world impact. So that was it for the overview.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Great. Nicola, I have to ask you, what's the reaction when you present a 70-page business plan to a farmer?
There are several answers to this question. Obviously, you would not necessarily present such a business plan to a farmer directly. And there are obviously ways to personalize this to different audiences. I find some of the comments that have been made incredibly relevant. There is no one size fits all. And there is a way to personalize depending the audience, but also the capacity, the geographic dimension that is very, very clear. There is, on top of that, this whole dimension of anti-fragility, which to us is very important because the world is not becoming more calm seas, quite the opposite. So we have to have all of these things in mind. But very clearly, depending the audience we present this to, this can be fine-tuned. Nick.
Thank you.
If I may, just on this remark, I just run an anti-fragility diagram architecture that I asked the model to provide us with, because if you have a discussion with farmers, with the stakeholders, and with the ecosystem, you can directly ask the system to provide in an iteration all of the elements you need to move the needle and to move forward with things. So here is, for example, an anti-fragility graph that is informing us on this particular dimension.
Right. Okay, Alberto, you want to say something on data, I'm told.
Can you hear me well?
Because we're running short of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now.
I wanted to connect your question, like presenting this, for instance, to a farmer or to any other stakeholder, to the connection and the input we have heard about the data part, right? One of the main motivations for our contribution has been that of creating an AI system that has the purpose of generating a shared understanding and a common model of reality. What you see, for instance, here in this case with the anti-fragility lens and model is, can we build something where we have a common understanding? Can we use that to understand what are the root causes and what can we do about this so that we have a common understanding and we can build solutions in a way that is analytical and also easy to understand for everybody, for every stakeholder?
Thank you very much. Can I, a friend from Norway, because you talked about being on a small farm, how does this kind of thing go? Would this go down with you?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm lucky to be a system engineer, right? So it's like I've been working with complex systems since I was, I don't know, started building computers.
Which is more complex, being a farmer or an engineer?
I would say they have different complexities, right? The problem of being a farmer is that you need to be practical. You need to be out in the field, get your hands dirty. And most of the technology kind of stuff, especially in AI today, is not connected with the ground. So I think, I mean, when you were presenting this, I was thinking it would be really cool to connect this with our system because then you could create these kind of personal agents. And then you could feed this information into a system where I can ask in plain language or any language I want, you know, explain this to me in a way I understand it, which is pretty easy to do.
That's something to work on.
Yeah, we could do this in 15 minutes if you send me the document.
Right, before the end of today.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, there's a challenge for you. Now look, we've, as I say, we've got about just under half an hour to run. Let's ask you to, in your tables, let's go for what's called a commitment sprint. You've heard a lot of data, you've heard a lot of shortcomings, but you've also heard the potential, and you've come here to work out how regenerative can work on farms, whichever size. 15 minutes, please, to work out one idea per table, which you can summarize in 2 sentences, which we can ask you to just elaborate when I go around the tables. But 15 minutes, and then we'll close at 4:30. Please, go ahead. Would the speakers like to join the tables? Okay, you've got 15 minutes.
Oh, good. One idea for what?
Yeah, an idea for what exactly?
Regenerative on any size.
Like how to implement regenerative on any size?
I think it's like a business idea or a tool idea or something.
Let's embrace the ambiguity and formulate the challenges we would like to answer it rather than we have a daddy in the room. Fantastic.
I mean, we can go full AI. We can do like optimize my landscape for what the future, you know, what the market next year looks like, or you know, and combine it with what practices I need to get a grip on before I
so like very, or
we work in places where farmers come.
Yeah, I mean,
so like, and they live in basic infrastructure. So even you can give them information, but what are they going to do about it if we don't have like proper roads or like just like warehouses or like
unless they are going broke and losing farm, or there's a generational change. Period. So the change is usually inspired by economic incentive, right? Or younger generation saying, hey, we're facing mega droughts and need to be more resilient. How do we do that? So as far as, the incentives, those are the incentives. The tools to do it tend to be not knowing, like literally just not having the education and go. Farmers and ranchers are not going to come to a workshop usually to show up and learn something new unless it's a young new person getting into it, because by showing up you're admitting that you don't know something. And again, the over 50-year-old farmers and ranchers who have been doing it generationally are not going to show up and be like, I'm failing, there's too much pride. So as far as tools,
psychological support app.
yeah, I mean,
No, I think that would be great.
you also have to be,
I like that idea.
and you also have to be really cognizant that, like, I can barely get producers over 60 years old to answer their emails or a text. They're like a phone call, we work on paper, we do grazing plans on paper. There's the idea of like, use this to do this and then pull up whatever to show data points. 85% of producers are going to be like really resistant to any major move in tech, unless it is simple enough with a high enough, incentive to do it.
You probably don't even need that. Because if you think about the thing that you want as an outcome, it's practice change, not the record-keeping change, communication.
And to be honest, research has even shown that without all the fancy tools, it's the actual farmer or rancher who knows their land the best. Without fancy language, right? Without tech.
And sometimes it's just that it's good. Like I think it's the economic incentive and that flowing through, taking the friction out of the system, so that somebody who's willing to pay for it can pay for it.
So things that have been shown to work are like guaranteed offtake, like I will guarantee to buy your supply, whatever it is. Created a partnership with their 500 producer group in Australia to guarantee purchasing their wool at a certain price, and if they followed a certain soil health protocol. So that guarantee of where my supply is going at what price is amazing. And then guaranteeing any sort of premium, like commoditization. Beef producers, like in the States, can't make money barely at all anymore because it's all commoditized. They're selling into the commodity beef market.
I think that's the biggest challenge. And
Commoditizing.
The commoditizing and the lack of ability to produce at your own farm.
Yeah.
Right? Or kind of upscale the value of the produce. And I think one thing that you were saying, which is like coming in from the outside, buying a new farm, trying to get into the community. But I've noticed that it's like you meet this same, they don't want to say that they need help, right? So they don't want to lean into the innovation process that we are offering.
Well, the risk. We have to de-risk it. De-risk the change.
But what I've noticed is that in a lot of agricultural communities, the co-op structure is pretty solid, right? So it's like maybe something in that nature but it's rooted in transforming from the cooperative rather than transforming from the individual, like a capacity building or kind of like a structural opportunity program with kind of.
There's something about markets, right? There's something that if we could focus on the market, at the end of the day, that's what is empowering the farmer, incentivizing, as I hear it.
Well, and so remember, when we're talking about farmers and ranchers, we're not just talking about food. We're talking about leather, wool, textiles, meat products, obviously vegetable. But one thing that has been working is if a corporate is willing to, for whatever reason, because of their own SDG goals, because of their own whatever environmental P&Ls, if a corporate is willing to invest in a group of producers for the training and implementation support, and then also commit to the purchase of the product, then it works, because now you're de-risking for the producer. You're not asking them to pay anything more, and then whatever for the corporate gets their environmental goals.
And maybe secure a deeper connection with the supply chain.
Yeah, for sure.
At a slight premium.
Yeah, but I think this supply chain is a very interesting perspective that we have kind of run into and seen, because you have the industrial value chains,
Yeah.
and you get dragged into them if you want to do something, right? Yeah. But if you can kind of think, like create a concept where you go away from commodity and where your goal is to kind of build more brand or experience around what you're producing and in a collective way, so that you actually offset the risk, right? So you build a marketplace that can then be maybe financed and with different subsidies, but in a collective way. Because I think I think there is a very big opportunity in that intersection between the market, creating new marketplaces, and transitioning to a new model.
Yeah, and just as it's actually categorically untrue that we don't have research connected to practices in regenerative agriculture. That is categorically not correct. So there are peer-reviewed articles since even the early 2000s on holistic management, increasing water retention rates by 30%, increasing forage production by 40%, etc. So as a producer who is ranching in southwestern Colorado in the western U.S., one of the biggest reasons I do it is because I can capture 30% more water in my soil in one of the biggest mega droughts ever in history. That is resiliency. So I'm not destocking when my neighbors are destocking, which is a make or break kind of financial situation for a producer.
You're going to set an example, and then others are going to follow with it, but it's taken longer.
It's
But there's other situations where that's harder to do, either because the transition actually takes you first down the yield curve before it takes you back up, and so somebody needs to finance that.
And I came directly into RegenAg.
All right.
So I was open to it.
10 minutes gone. 10 minutes gone. 5 minutes left, please. 5 minutes left.
That both of you were talking about, and actually knowing what goes where. I think
Also knowing, Sarah, you created your own brand.
Yeah.
You created your more or less own route to market. I don't know if you have a broker or somebody who helps you with it.
No, I
don't. But e-commodity is also part of our fund strategy. It's like, we're just focusing on higher value crops, not commodity crops.
Yeah.
Because first of all, that's the only way we can actually returns that the margin. We can reallocate the margin. But moreover, we see the overall food system ultimately shifting to a model where you again have a local food supply chain. Because all things being equal, some is human control, some is controlled by the unleashing of nature and nature breaking down. You have to create the resiliences in all parts of the system.
And then the whole community starts caring about the watershed.
And all of a sudden you have
like
the
everything.
enlightenment of the community, like I actually knows where my fucking milk comes from, and it's not, that the connection is the biggest. I've worked 20 years on building sustainable food brands. The biggest problem, and you just have to make it sexy to sell it, right? Aspiration. But what we always wanted to sell it on is the connection to it. You care where it comes from. You care what you put in your children's mouths. But that disconnection is just getting wider until we have a coming around. I'm thinking Europe, we're producing pigs for the whole world in Denmark. It's bullshit. We're producing pigs for the entire world, or butter based on Brazilian soy. That model needs to die.
Yeah, sure. Well,
and the corporates, underlying corporates will die because commodity prices are going up. It's going to fall by itself. Because you can't do commodities at a higher price, which is why it's really showing already now, but it's going to show more profoundly. And those of us who are ready for a localized, regionalized food system are going to win out.
Right, 1 minute to go. 1 minute to go.
Certain commodities, commodities like coffee, it's going to be a very dire, non-caffeinated set of farmers in the Midwest if you try to grow the coffee locally.
It could be like the bullet model.
No, but we're going to have back to having coffee as a luxury.
And that would be great. And that's true. And you know, the artificial caffeine is actually just as
coffee substitute.
Yeah,
all kinds of innovations.
That's actually true. I'm coming to coffee because that's what that's the commodity that is scaled for us at first. We're trying to solve that ability to bring data back. So Nespresso was mentioned before as our largest customer. OpenSC, which stands for Open Supply Chains. So it's a data platform that tries to get data from hard to reach places. And so we've, over the last 3 years, kind of scaled to 70% now as of end of last year. Nespresso's global coffee production.
All right, I don't want to end the conversations, but time is going to beat us. So can I ask you for a bit of silence now? I'm going to come to each table. There's no pre-selection, and you're not listening to me.
No. So Nespresso is paying for that. Somebody needs to pay for it because that's a lot of work.
Right. Who's going to speak here? Who's going to speak on this table? Right. Okay.
That's true. So we had that name before.
All right, I'm just going to start talking and hope that we can get this started. No, I know. I'm just going to keep talking until people... I don't know if everyone is coming up with the solution, but we were not able to. I'm really shocked, considering the intelligence around the table. And so I'll just say what we talked about. Well, no, the commitment was saying we need to do better. We need to put the farmer at the center, the landscape, talk about data to benefit farmers and not add additional burden with new innovations, help them make the decisions and make things easier for the data on reporting, data for finance, unlocking existing finance and additional finance mechanisms, new nature, biodiversity, carbon, etc. And what am I missing here? There was one other point.
The title is Need to Do Better.
No, we don't have a solution. We couldn't play that game. We just had a real honest discussion. Farm data support.
Right. Give me the microphone. Let me pass it over here. Well done, thank you.
All right, so on that side, we came up with two solutions. We are not sure, they might not fit the guidelines, but still. So the first one is from the regulators' policy side, simple stop subsidies, particularly to fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers. Practical solutions on the farm side, actually it's not exactly farm side, but create a marketplace for regenerative agriculture products.
Yes.
That will then bypass all the intermediaries in the value chain, such that farmers fetch a better margin for their products and are incentivized to produce these products. Thank you.
Right, microphone is here.
No, we came up with a problem, and then about 8 other problems, I'm afraid. Sorry. So I work for a company. The problem I put forward, basically, hoping that these bright minds would help me, is we contract with about 100,000 farmers. They all have very small land holdings, and most of them don't actually own the land, they lease it. So they might lease it 1 year, they might lease it year 2, year 3. Year 4, they then might end up leasing a slightly different parcel of land in a similar area. So the question is, how do you do regen agri practices that take 3, 4, 5, 6 years to actually come to fruition when a farmer has no guarantee that they'll be going back to the same piece of land? So if anyone has an idea for this, it would be great, because we were sort of bounding around things like, okay, well, you know, what about the way that SBTI has the methodology for these things? How do you do something, for example, where you say, well, I know that I'm operating on this amount of land in this area, so can you do sort of like generalized things? Can you use data points from a few places and help to extrapolate those out? Anything like that. So that was the problem, no solution, sorry. Very helpful. A commitment is that I promise I will sort it out, because if I don't, I'll probably lose my job in 2030, because the board's bonus is dependent on it. So you've
got 4 years.
I've got 4 years to get this sorted.
So on our side, we went on a little bit on a side quest and tried to change a little bit the point of view. And we ended up in discussing on the few points that we've been hearing around during the session. such as connecting to financing, finding the right digital MRV, PPPs, different kind of, and all these points, I think they had like one point in common, which is the capacity of discovery, a solution, and matching with that solution. So maybe we should bring more attention on the superpower or the connectivity, the capacity of connecting humans, whether it is an expert, whether it is in agriculture, whether it is an investor, the capacity of finding what I'm searching for. And so having maybe an ecosystem approach into this process, so making the discoverability of a solution available.
Thank you. Right. Please, across there.
Yeah, okay, so since I'm somehow ended up with the task, we were kind of discussing a lot of interesting aspects, but with practitioners and a lot of different
We're just looking for a commitment.
Yes, okay. So we go from, our idea is going from commodity to brand and experiences together. So that's kind of like where we start, building marketplaces for reconnecting the value chain to ecosystem resilience. So it's about localized food systems, open supply chain, making information and knowledge available at the fingertips of the farmers.
Thank you. All right, we're almost out of time. I'd like to ask the five panelists, although Arne has now left, what's your impression of the kind of things we've just heard? Are we moving in the right direction? Have they moved in the right direction? Have they made things which are going from pilot to repeatable options which can work and be scaled up?
I don't know. I think it's so complex and really difficult to find. Just it's not one solution. I think we have to find many solutions at the same time. So for me, the most important problem is the reward of the farmer and how we secure the farmer during the transition. All farmers are convinced that they have to go in the Regen Ag. They know that. But how we can help them to do that. And for that, I think...
Do you actually have polling which confirms that they all want to...
Yeah, in France, more than 70% of them are convinced, yeah. But less than 50% have engaged. So I have a... so that's sure, yeah. So maybe there's many difference between the global south and Canada, America, or Europe. That's the same agriculture. But in France, I have the numbers, so I can say that they are convinced. And I think so. We have to secure them. That's really important. That's the first point. And we have to reward them. And I think it's not only the problem of the supply chain. It's agriculture is not a problem of supply chain, it's a problem of society. So all companies are involved in the problem of agriculture. All companies, all people, I think it's the beginning of the society, agriculture. So we need to find money, but not only inside the supply chain, everywhere.
Thank you. Emmett, do you want to add anything? Tanya, do you want to add anything? Your reflection on what we've achieved in 90 minutes.
Sure, definitely. Sounds like a lot of folks had nice brainstorms. It's hard to find solutions. I think there's a lot of complex problems in this industry and in this space. And I think I just like to highlight the power of coming together, the power of alliances and working together. I think that is where the success lies. And if everyone can really start to work to empower the future, to empower youth, to empower farmers, to take on these new solutions, I think that will help to build momentum. And momentum can build success. But I think it's about taking tangible baby steps to get to this larger vision that is much more complex to get to.
Sabi.
I think a lot has been summarized. I'd say, yeah, I think a lot of solutions are required. I think there's, over the last few years, I do think there's been a lot of progress, and so I think we do tend to be quite pessimists in in the regen ag world, but I do think there's like a lot of positive things going on, and already a lot of coalitions and collaborations happening. I think that I agree that collaboration is the key. We didn't talk much about government. I think government and subsidies from governments play a really key role here.
Do governments get it? Of course.
Yeah, I think government's complex and they might get it, then implementing is a bit of a different story. So I think that's one piece that, is a bit above me. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of small pieces that a lot of us can build upon, and then if we collaborate, there's definitely a lot of work that we can get done.
Thank you. Tanya.
I think, we work in many different contexts, and I think that context is key. And I think the issues that are relevant and financing, like everyone talks about finance as like this magical thing, but like the reality is like, form follows function, and financing money will flow if there is like a business case to doing something. And I think in some cases it's subsidies, like in Europe and in other places in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, the farmers we work with cannot read and do not have electricity and do not have proper roads. So I think, we are all incredibly privileged people that can afford to be here in Davos at WWF, and I think we all have something to contribute to this space, and it'd be great to find opportunities and venues to work maybe in smaller groups around very tangible, actionable things that we can do to actually unlock additional funding that is so much needed.
Thank you, Tanya. Let's have a footnote, or more than a footnote, from Nicola about the data you've seen, about what you saw on the board, and what this means with one example.
Thanks, Nick. First of all, for me, this is very emotional, because the first beta tester of our orchestration system has been somebody in this space, regenerative agriculture. Not a farmer, but somebody coming out of ETH, the Polytechnical School of Zurich, and with a deep passion for exactly what we talk about. And the gentleman had an idea, project, and fed it into our system. So this is not sort of like a meta feedback from a discussion. This is really us being Epictetus disciples and listening to the world twice as much as we speak. We listened to him, and then the system came back with a few advices. And the system advised him to essentially change course with his project of regenerative agriculture. What's the result? He managed to convince one of the founders of Neuralink to become a co-founder of his project. And they now raised capital to deploy it. This is essentially what we need. We need to multiply these examples. We are running on borrowed time. We cannot afford to waste another 5-10 years of human entrepreneurial genius. André Hoffmann said it best. There are so many challenges, and we have to have that triple bottom line. Financial capital, nature capital, and social capital, and we have to deliver on all of the three. How can we accelerate this? We cannot afford to wait anymore, and we have to go in the right direction. That's what we try to help, humbly, and we're obviously super happy to discuss with anyone after this session. Nick, thank
Tanya,
you.
can I just ask you, is that the kind of thing which you believe will mobilize money?
Sorry, it's not clear to me what you're actually funding. Sorry.
We are funding nothing at the moment. We are going to build ventures ourselves. But when we tested the orchestration system with people in the real world, in this case, somebody in the regenerative agricultural field, that person we tested it with had a project, and the orchestration system essentially told the person to change course. And based on that vision, he then attracted funding and a co-founder from Neuralink. and the whole system, the whole thing is now lifting off. That is to us what looks like success.
I mean, I think one thing is sort of pre-seed venture and funding ideas and being able to come up with a pitch deck. I think the other thing is actually being able to execute and being able to raise follow-on funding and be able to raise working capital and get larger and larger contracts. I assume that the person that used the system also maybe had a background and a track record and credibility, because if you look at financing, you don't just look at like a pitch deck, you also look at, who is the people, like what is the substance behind this institution, and I think that is the most important thing. So it's great to put, ChatGPT and like AI, a lot of this is like a word calculator to some extent, and like being able to mine different phrases and put them together in a way that is compelling, but the things that matter are things in the real world.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Nicola, as well. We're right on time. Thank you all very much for incredible commitment over the last hour and a half. But remember what we've just heard several times. There is not the time, there is not the luxury of time, given the enormity of the challenge for farming. Can I thank you all very much, particularly the panelists?
You're making a lot of notes. Yeah, so I run a